Hello, Endersword here again. Just wanted to make a quick video on this Esports Certification Institute exam thing that got announced today, and there's been a lot of reaction and talk about it, and wanted to, I guess, chime in with my 2 cents, both on this one specifically and really on this sort of industry in general, and how it tends to work. I know that a lot of people kind of in the esports community are probably like high school age, university age, young adults that are probably on the verge of starting careers or at least thinking about moving in that direction. And you're kind of the prime targets for this sort of certification of unnecessary things. And there's some that work, there's some that are good, there's some that are bad. So wanted to kind of touch on that. Now the problem that the Esports Certification Institute is trying to solve is a genuine one, which is that there is a lot of nepotism and jobs given to people solely because they're friends with someone or because of networking and who you know sort of things. There's a couple reasons for that. One is because it's a foundling industry. It's kind of at its infancy, and there's a lot of small companies out there. Small startups and so on tend to be groups of friends or people that they know, that they trust, that are kind of in inner circles, and they kind of go by word of mouth and who do we know. So that's pretty common for a lot of small industries. The other thing that makes it worse on the esports side is that it's such a generalist type of industry, again, particularly when you're dealing with the smaller side of things. Is there's a lot of roles that do not require a lot of specialization. They just kind of require a enthusiastic person that has some good judgment sometimes, or maybe is creative, or but very often, like, just are you willing to work and are you enthusiastic is basically the primary qualification. Also, one of the issues is that most people that you're going to be hiring in this sort of thing and really want to be in this industry are younger people. So it's not like you can go on this long track record of their work experience or anything. Some are just straight out of school or still in school, or their work experience may be fairly light, retail, a coffee shop, stuff like that, which doesn't really tell you a lot about what they're going to be like as an employer, what their particular skill set is. So that definitely plays into it as well. As the industry matures and has matured over the past 10 years or so, you obviously have more and more specialized roles. So there's people that are obviously in things like production, audio, set design, a lot of things that are a lot more technical than people that are on the side of just, I don't know, social media management or a team manager or like a player wrangler, that sort of thing, where they're really dealing with more people and hospitality and things like that. So, and communication and whatever. So you get a little bit of a divide there. And I think that's one of the areas that this certification seems to really fall down on, is there's no specialized knowledge in it. It's very, very broad knowledge. We'll go over some a little later of what sort of things they're asking. But essentially, I think it can be summed up with grade 10 math, first class of a business course information, so like SWOT analysis and stuff like that, and then human common sense, then combined with a little bit of esports trivia from the past 10 years or so. So I think those things kind of make up what it is, and there's not really a lot in there that would test any specific knowledge on whether you could do any role. So if you were looking to hire someone to be an esports event planner or work on your production crew or put together marketing proposals or something, there's really nothing in this that would indicate whether or not this person would be good for that sort of thing or not. And I think that's one of the big areas that it falls down on. And again, I'll show some of the questions and content a little later. But to speak on certifications in general, there's generally like 3 tiers of them, 3, maybe 4 tiers. The first is kind of where you get your legally required sort of certifications. Those generally are non-negotiable things. If you're a lawyer, you're going to do the bar exam or whatever the equivalent is where you are. If you're a medical professional, you obviously need licenses and an education and things that indicate that you have that. There's certain things, myself, I'm in banking and finance stuff. I had to do licenses to become a trader, and you have to have this to deal with this type of asset, and this to deal with derivatives, and this to deal with futures, that sort of thing. So you just need to have those things. But then there's also a lot of stuff that is tacked on top of that that you don't necessarily need. And those can be divided into stuff that an industry actually wants anyway, and things that they don't really want or even know about. So some things, like if you're in the IT side, you may want certifications that show that you're proficient in Python, or you're good at C++, or you're good at this type of development, or you can do this sort of thing. That makes a lot of sense because it's hard for them to test in depth whether you know that, and it's not necessarily a direct byproduct of the university education you may have had, or you may not have even done that. You just know this stuff on your own and you've learned on your own. So it's a good way to kind of get around that, demonstrate knowledge, and a lot of those are accepted and recognized, that people know what they are. They may even ask for this sort of certification. They want to know that you've done this, that you've worked on this sort of project, that you've done this sort of thing. The PMP is another one for project management, that a lot of employers will actually ask for that or put that on job postings, that it would be beneficial if someone has this, or they're required to have this and this much experience in this field. So those things, again, while not legally required, are still something that an employee is looking for. Then you get to kind of the low tier of things where no one's even asking for it, and it kind of, they try and pitch them as like, well, show some initiative and show that you know something, or maybe add a talking point to your resume sort of thing. And those are very, very hit or miss, and usually more often than not are a waste of money and a waste of your time. In my industry, again, one area that we saw a lot of that in is things like cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. There are tons of certifications and educational courses and diplomas and stuff you can get in cryptocurrency, the CCT, the CCE, the C4 certification, the Certified Bitcoin Professional certification, things like that are all out there. And they all tend to be the same type of thing, which is a really short course followed by an exam that you could basically do the entire thing in like half an hour, 2 hours from the time you enroll to the time that you finish it. That sort of thing is out there, and they'll take $100 from you or $200. Very often they're kind of preying on the fact that, I did one that was called the Certified Bitcoin Professional because my company paid for it. Who convinced the company to pay for it? I don't know. Someone took someone out for drinks or something and convinced them that we needed this thing that obviously is completely valueless. Literally did it in 10-15 minutes, and then I helped some other people do it. So it just not regulated at all. Like, there's nothing to it. That sort of thing is not going to be particularly valuable. It's not going to get noticed. It's not what a hiring manager is going to look for. I've hired a number of people over the course of the last 10 years, and I've never looked for anything beyond what we actually need. It's nice if people do, and this is actually my advice, if people want to show initiative in an area, or show that you do have experience in this or that, or that you're passionate about this and you think that would be helpful, it would be much better if you found something recreational to do with it. So I hire a bit on the machine learning side, and I have picked up a number of people that have done on their own machine learning competitions, or kind of builds on their own, or worked on projects on their own. And I'd much rather take that over kind of a certification no one's ever heard of in that space. There's obviously the academic side of it, and there are things that are recognized, but just doing something that no one's ever heard of doesn't really pay off for you. And kind of my advice on that too is, if it's a brand new thing, then I wouldn't be the guinea pig on it. It's possible that some of these things do eventually take off and they become an industry standard. I kind of doubt it in this particular case, but that happens. Everything has to start somewhere, and some of them do get picked up. But there's no reason that you should be the guinea pig on that. Wait until the employers are actually recognizing it and looking for it, and once they start asking for it, then maybe you consider having it. But there's no reason for you to go spend $400 or $500 on something that isn't something that's in demand. And I understand the instinct to do it because you want to get into a particular field, or you want to kind of demonstrate some initiative, or you want to feel like you're working towards it, particularly if you've been having a hard time finding a job in that industry. But it's just not necessarily going to help you, and there may be better ways to go about it and to get yourself noticed rather than paying money in order to do so. The other thing, which is really, really bad with it, and these guys at least aren't doing it too bad because they're giving the exam and they're offering a study guide, which you can pay for, but it's right there and you don't need to pay for it. So it was kind of a pay what you can sort of thing, and you can put in apparently $0 and just take it. So that's not too bad. Very often, a lot of these certifications, not only did they invent the certification out of nothing, but then they invent a $700 prep course for their certification. And it's just such a scam sort of thing. And you even see that in some of the areas where it is a legitimate thing, like the CFA or the CPA, which, by the way, these guys advertised and mentioned costs $3,300 or $4,000. Not even remotely is that true. A CFA exam is about $700. The CPA is about $800 with like a $50 registration fee or exam location fee or something, like not even in the ballpark of what they said to try and justify this $400 price. Most like coding certifications or the PMP project management one, I know that one's like $275. Coding ones tend to be like between $100 and $300, something like that. If you're out of that range, then really question it. And given the low effort that went into this one, the price just seems out of this world for what it actually is and what the usefulness of it would be. So yeah, that's my general advice on it is, look at whether or not whatever you need is actually in demand, something that people want, and something that people would look for. Because again, if you're talking about big companies and so on, your resume is going in and it's being auto-scanned for words and things like that anyway. If you've got something that no one recognizes in the first place, then they don't really care. And I could say, as again, someone that's hired a number of people, I don't really care if you've got something I've never heard of. I'm much more interested if you've like done something or kind of taken the initiative on something, even if it's on the recreational side, to show an interest in an area. To me, would be a lot more of a weight than like, okay. Because I think a lot of people understand, again, from the hiring side, it's not that you take these courses and demonstrate knowledge, you're just buying the certificate. The courses that are usually sold this way are not difficult in any way, and there's no real course to it. It's just, would you like to buy a diploma that says that you did a thing? And again, we'll see that maybe now. So that's kind of my advice in general. So this is their whole study guide, and obviously won't go through most of it. But what is generally in here is very, very, very high level, like as in if you took like a BBA or whatever, the Bachelor of Commerce or whatever it is in your area, and you went into the very first marketing class, these are the things that you would learn like literally on the syllabus or something. Like you would learn this in the first class or two sort of things, business level knowledge, like what is a SWOT analysis and things like that. There's some very basic data comprehension, they call it, which is just, can you read a graph? Do you know grade 7 to 10 level math? And that's about it. And then a lot of it is, what is some esports trivia? I'm going to ask you about some esports things in the past 10 years. And then also, do you have decisions that will not lead to the death of people or like, can you make basic human decisions, is basically it. So if we jump to kind of what they have on their practice test, I think the first question is probably one of the best examples of kind of the level that you're going to get on this. So a normally distributed data set has a mean and standard deviation of 11.5 and 2.0 respectively. What value is exactly 2 standard deviations less than the mean? So the very first question is quite literally, what is 2 times 2? And then subtract that from 11.5. So you get 7.5. So, and they actually ask a number of times about things like, can you use a standard deviation? Nowhere in this is can you calculate the standard deviation, which is a little harder, is how you actually arrive at that. But in each of these questions, they just tell you what it is, and they don't require you to do any more than addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. There's nothing more than that in here, whereas they're clearly trying to make it on this will show that you know statistics, but it doesn't, because it doesn't actually require that you know how any of that works. It just, if we give you the answer, can you multiply the answer by 2? And that happens a number of times. The other one here, again, I say that a lot of this is high school level math, and I think everyone out here has probably done this, which is a player's practicing and wants an accuracy of 80% average. In the first 5 games, they averaged 78% accuracy. If they're going over 6 games, how much more do you need in the last game in order to get your 80% accuracy? Has anyone that's been in any school not done that for their own tests? They know what the weighting is of the first 4 tests that you took in the semester. And then you say, okay, on my final exam, I need to get this in order to get an 85. And, you know, my parents won't be mad at me or whatever it is. So I think everyone's kind of, again, at probably a junior high level, you've been capable of doing this sort of thing. So again, it just doesn't improve, it doesn't prove anything. It cloaks itself in statistics, but it's not. Same here, it's the exact same question, but just on both sides. Average thing gets 30 retweets with a standard deviation of 2.5. Which of the volumes are more than 2 standard deviations away? So again, can you multiply 2.5 times 2 and then both add and subtract that to 30? And if you can do that, then you say, okay, A, B, and D, we're good. So a lot of them are that sort of thing. Again, here's just another average. If I add a number to it, what would it be? That sort of thing. I give you 2 types of data. One of them is a number, one of them is not. Which one's a number? That sort of thing. Some basic stuff about, what is CPM, things like that. So all of that stuff is really, really basic, and it's the type of thing they kind of touch in there on if you're giving a survey, what type of answers do you get? Again, super, super low level marketing type questions, not even really into marketing, just kind of very, very basic stuff. Ratios, again, this is quite literally grade 7 or 8 level math, that sort of thing. So then they get into, let's see, again, this is all like, basically survey data, that sort of thing. They get into then situational stuff a little later on. They give you the trivia sort of questions. Which continent has the greatest number of esports fans? Sounds very crucial to most jobs that you would have. Out of these games, which has the largest reach? They asked here, I think, at one point, which is the most popular Chinese platform. If you didn't know that and you got a job, you could just find out immediately. Like, it's not like this is showing that you have a background or a skill in something. It's just literally a piece of information that you know, and if you didn't know it, you could just Google it immediately, or like it's just broad information. It's not like a skill that you need to have or apply, that sort of thing. They've got, which of these is played on a PC or versus mobile or console is dumb. How does a bracket work? They literally are asking things like, if it's a 1 game a tournament and how many games have they played to get from here to here? Okay, great. Like, basically, do you know how a basic bracket works? Just kind of really, really dumb stuff on this. So when they first kind of tweeted it out, I was skeptical of it. And then some people started tweeting out what some of the questions are. And I'm like, okay, I got to talk about this because this is just, it went from, yeah, that's a cute idea, but I don't really think it makes sense, to once I read this, I'm like, okay, they knew what they were doing. And this was just a piss poor effort. This is just straight up an attempt to take money from people. There's no value in this, and no one that put this together could have possibly thought that there was any value to this. That if you were hiring someone, is this the type of thing that you would want them to be able to answer, or would you like them to be able to actually do something or have some sort of business knowledge or ability? Just kind of answering like the lowest level math. Like if you have a high school diploma, I assume that you know all that math. If you've watched esports if you at all want it to be in the industry, you know 90% of that anyway. This isn't a course that is going to demonstrate that you've learned anything or can do anything. It's just very, very basic level of stuff. They kind of ended off with a practice essay. God knows how they are going to grade that sort of thing. Like, I'm sure they don't care. I think that this, again, it really falls into the category of just like a diploma mill sort of thing, where all they're looking to do is take the money, you write the test. I think most people that would pick up this sort of thing would take it and write the test probably the same day, because you don't actually have to learn any of this. You would probably take one look at that practice test and be like, okay, fine, just show me the real test and let's get this over with. And your pass rate's going to be like 98% or something like that. So yeah, that's my opinion overall. The one thing that I wanted to chime in, because I myself had this reaction at first, and I kind of responded to someone in a tweet on some of the advisors on this project. I was a little disappointed, I guess, to see that some of the people on there were not people that I thought would be involved in this sort of thing. I kind of thought about it a little bit more of how that develops, and I think I'd walk that back a tiny bit, that I know for this sort of thing, probably what's happened is about a year ago, someone came to these people and said, hey, we want to do this, and we think this would be good to have a certification for the industry and whatever. Would you like to be on the advisory board and help us shape this? And here's what we'd be willing to pay you to do that. Are you willing to do that? And at the time, when you haven't seen what the product is yet, you might think like, oh, okay, well, that could be a good idea. You could test people on this stuff and this stuff and this stuff, and that would help me determine if you'd be a good sound engineer, or you'd be good at, graphical design for production, or if you'd be whatever it is. And you would think initially, okay, that's fine. I'll do that. That's not going to hurt anyone. And then I think months later, when they either didn't consult you at all because they didn't really want your advice, they just want your endorsement, or they consulted you a little, but then clearly I don't think they did any of it. Like, from the list of people that are on those advisory things, I don't feel like they had a lot of input into this, or at least it wasn't totally taken into account. But then at the end of it, you're kind of like, okay, well, this sucks, but now what do? I already kind of agreed to do this. They probably already paid you to do it. You've probably already put some time into it, and you're committed to now tweet about it or endorse it or something like that. So it's down to, okay, do I want to like give them back, $20,000 or whatever they gave me, or do I just be like, all right, well, that didn't work out, but it's not that big a deal, and people are going to figure out this is kind of crap anyway. And I kind of think that that's probably what happened. You kind of get drawn into that sort of thing, and then it's just that, do you object at the very end, and is it worth taking a stand on it and giving back like whatever they paid you, when it's probably not going to really hurt anyone or whatever. So I don't know. That's kind of my thinking on it now that I've thought about it a little bit more. So I don't overly blame people, but it is still a little bit, I don't know, it's a little bit disappointing, but I kind of get it. It's, again, like someone that's signed a deal to say, I'll play that game when it comes out and I'll do a stream about it. And then you kind of play the game and you're like, this is really bad, but I didn't know it was bad when I signed up for it. So now I'm kind of have a contract that says that I have to say not be negative, but so I'll like, do the faint praise sort of thing. And, it is what it is. And my viewers will understand that, this is a sponsored thing and that's what I'm doing. So I think it's that. So I probably wouldn't judge it too harshly on that, but just wanted to kind of talk about this because it both applies here and I think in industries in general. I know that a lot of people are starting out careers and whatever, so hopefully that's good general advice for anyone. And I've been talking too long, so that's all.